your names. My name is Pam Hines, and I have the privilege of serving in the role of the chair holder for the William and Joanne Conway Chair in Nursing Research here at Children's National. And quite exciting for me, this is the start of the 7th season of the Conway Chair Conversations. As you know, these conversations are meant to bring together individuals with fun ideas that could change healthcare in pediatrics for children, their families, their communities. What we try very hard to do is to bring forward ideas that, in fact, will connect researchers, innovators, and clinicians. Out of this effort has come many positive consequences, and we look forward to today really marking why innovation is being given a special emphasis. Now, before I go into a little bit more of a headline about today, I'd like to invite Eileen Eng to do the formal CME attestation for this entire conversation. Eileen. Let's see. Eileen, we're not able to hear you. Are you able to hear us?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay. I think I'll take my mask off for this. The notice of requirement for completion to receive contact hours. Those present, please add your name to the sign-in roster if you're here, or to the chat box, because I need to generate a roster of your names. For those joining by Zoom, at the conclusion of this session or midway, you'll receive a jot form link that will allow you to complete the evaluation. Prior to submitting the completed evaluation, make certain that you print your certificate. If you have any problems with that, you can email me. I want you to know that the planning committee and faculty have no conflicts of interest. And this sponsorship has been sponsored by the Conway Chair Endowment. For those of you who claim CME, you'll claim the CME through the standard procedure that you use when you want to claim CME in the ANOVA portal. Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen. And if I may briefly share with you that in addition to the purpose of the Conway Chair Conversations, there are Conway scholars, and joining us today, Dr. Lisa Ring, Mr. Duran Wilson, Eileen Eng, also not able to join us, but most definitely scholars, Dr. Vicki Friedenberg, Dr. Randy Streisand. Well, may I then tell you a little bit about today and then introduce our conversationalists. This is particularly exciting for me. There's probably not much that hasn't happened in the last 20 months that hasn't been close to a crisis. It's very hard to think that nothing has changed in the last 20 years. What makes change so exciting is when we can innovate, when we finally take hold of something that has probably irritated us for a long time, hasn't worked for a long time, but now we're ready to take control of the situation and try to make it better. Now, innovation often appears to us like we create something, then we apply it in practice, and the world is better. But there's actually more that comes out of that. There's innovation that we're going to hear about today that goes all the way to publication. And then we have innovation that goes from talking with each other, listening to each other's complaints, seeing what needs to be better in clinical practice, and then is created here at Children's National Hospital. So as you know, with our conversations, we have a lead conversationalist, and then we have panelists, and I'd like to introduce them to you today. We very much want you to bring forward your questions. You're welcome to put them in the chat or to wait for the final 10 minutes of today's hour and then pose your questions directly. I can attest that these three conversationalists are fun, lively, well-informed. So our lead conversationalist for today is Jules Sherman. And Jules is joining us here at Children's National, coming from Stanford University. And she's actually the leader or director of the new Biodesign Program here at Children's National. For the last 8 years, she's been collaborating closely with physicians at Stanford and creating several different innovations. And she will refer to one of those today in a little bit more detail. She's also actually taught on different courses at Stanford about how you innovate, how you design, how you disseminate. It's very exciting to have her expertise here at Children's National. Now, she completed her baccalaureate degree in industrial design at the Rhode Island School of Design and her master's in design from Stanford University. So Jules will be our lead conversationalist. And I want you to know that then she's going to be followed by Lori Irvin. I'm so excited for you to know Lori. Lori began her professional career in a very different way, but certainly relevant to healthcare. She does want you to know she's the mother of 3 children. They range in age from 14 to 23 years. One of them figures largely in her observation for innovation. She graduated from the Indiana University of Pennsylvania with a bachelor's degree in rehabilitation and then worked as a special ed teacher for several years in our area as well as in New York City. She then went on to get her associate's degree in nursing from the College of Southern Maryland and then her bachelor's degree from Frostburg State University. She's been a nurse for 7 years, and we're incredibly excited that she joined us here at Children's National in 2017, starting out on our intestinal rehab unit, now our NICU nurse. And she's been very active in the Innovation Council here at Children's National within the Division of Nursing. Lori is going to be followed by Debbie Hadden. I know everyone at Children's National knows Debbie Hadden, but I would like to introduce her to you. She has been here for 31 years and consistently in a leadership role. She's been remarkable. Now, you know her now as actually being over critical care, acute care float pools, the IV team, the crisis team, and Bear Direct. She manages all of those. In addition, she mentors and she collaborated incredibly well, listened well, shared ideas well with a nurse resident several years ago, Mary Grace Bangs. And they talked about the challenges of being a float nurse. And out of that, listening to each other, offering what could be better, came a new product. And she's going to share that with us today. It couldn't be a better way to start off the 7th season of the Conway Chair Conversation. I thank all of our panelists and conversationalists in advance. And now I'm going to turn the program over to Jules Sherman. Jules. Jules, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Good afternoon. My name is Jules, and I am the new Biodesign Program Director at Children's National Hospital. I'm so honored to be here with everybody today and share some thoughts about innovation and how dissemination of new innovations happen beyond just publication in medical journals. So I'm going to share my screen. See if you can. Okay. Do you see that, or do you see my notes?
It's beautiful. No notes are showing. Thank you.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so I'm gonna just move forward then. So my talk is going to cover 2 topics: information about the new biodesign program at Children's National and an overview of dissemination from my perspective, from the designer entrepreneur perspective, with commercialization as the goal. So first, I just want to talk a little bit about the biodesign program. It consists of, right now, myself and Dr. Kalale Eskandanian, who's the Chief Innovation Officer at Children's, and Dr. Julia Finkel, my clinical liaison. And The Biodesign Program is funded by Innovation Ventures, SZI, and an FDA grant. And we have three main aims, and those aims include educating clinicians about innovation methods and collecting clinical problems from you that need attention. We also want to share your needs with University of Maryland bioengineering students and leverage promising projects for further development in our program. And we also wish to develop novel and needed medical products intended for commercialization that are clinician-led. So, you know, when Pam asked me to think about dissemination, you know, beyond publication, that was a really interesting question. I had never been asked about that in the context of innovation. And so first I wanted to just share what the precise definition of dissemination is. And I found that it is the targeted distribution of information and intervention materials to a specific public health or clinical practice audience. And the intent is to spread knowledge and the associated evidence-based interventions. And this occurs through a variety of channels. So as an industrial designer, researcher, and entrepreneur, I think about dissemination through a particular lens. And this lens always has the end in mind. So it doesn't, you know, stop with knowledge creation. It's the translation of knowledge into products or services or systems that improve patient care, safety, and outcomes, or clinician safety, workflow, ergonomics, etc. And all of the medical product development I have done over the last decade has been funded through government grants. So I believe that there is a responsibility to try and translate funded research into products or services that can help people live healthier lives. But in healthcare, it's very complex. There are many stakeholders that want to see a variety of materials prior to allowing sales in the healthcare market space. So dissemination doesn't end with publishing in journals. And thinking through the various phases of the design to launch process, I created this table to share the various stages and components of medical product design. And I realized that, hello Ingrid, I realized that when commercialization is the end goal, documentation regarding material choices and regulatory reports and verification and validation testing, patents, clinical study outcomes, value analysis assessments, they all need to be disseminated to potential customers. So without creating these documents for dissemination, commercialization is not possible. I even think about sales or the acquisition of one's IP, intellectual property, as the ultimate dissemination, because it means that the final product will finally be distributed to the end user, who are the people we want to serve with our innovations. So to me, dissemination means sharing the story. And there are three questions I ask myself when I want to tell a story about a new product innovation. First, what's the problem? Second, what is the new vision or innovation for this problem? And third, so what? What is the meaning behind the test data that we collect on the new product intervention? This means creating a presentation or a pitch, or writing an article, or even launching a social media campaign that shares the outcome of a study and engages the customer. So often dissemination of this information is more effective when we focus on an individual's healthcare story and then share a statistic that communicates the prevalence and incidence of the disease or condition that we are targeting. And Lori's project is actually a very good example of that idea. I'm going to share 3 different examples of products that I co-developed and how dissemination was used in these cases. So the first is Kangaroo, a very recent innovation I've been co-developing with a doctor. And Kangaroo is used to help facilitate kangaroo care in the NICU. And our current pilot study at Lucille Packard Children's Hospital required disseminating the actual product amongst parents and nurses in order to implement improvements prior to commercialization. The second product example I'd like to share is Primo Lacto. It's a closed system for colostrum collection. This is something that I designed a few years back. And on the left is a flyer I created for potential licensors. And on the right is a published study on the results of a clinical pilot test with Primo Lacto that was conducted at 3 different hospital sites in the United States. So those are 2 examples of dissemination. But then also, dissemination means distributing samples of products for free sometimes to clinicians in order to get the word out about a new innovation and to offer like a try before you buy kind of thing, so that you can build some trust and credibility amongst the people who you're trying to serve. And then after a formal study's been completed, attending trade shows for clinicians is another way for a product designer to disseminate information. So conducting oral presentations, distributing flyers at these conferences, speaking with nurses and doctors directly are all really effective ways of spreading the word about a new product. These images are from a trade show I attended with Lancino, the company that ended up acquiring Primo Lacto. And then the third example is actually a class curriculum that I co-developed for medical students. The Empathy Project was a Stanford D School class where we asked medical students to shadow a chronically ill patient at home, at school, and at work, and create a video documentary about a day in the life of that patient to share with their medical student peers. And we taught them ethnography skills, storytelling techniques, and video production as part of this course. This is a still shot from one of the students' videos about a patient. And this dissemination of knowledge is in a visual format. In this case, it's video, and it was disseminated amongst their peers. And this is an image of the student sharing out their patient day in the life videos with their peers. And we had a separate day where we shared the same videos with the patients and their families, which proved to be an incredibly cathartic experience for all of us. And then my co-instructors and I, we actually wrote a paper about this new class, which was published in Academic Pediatrics Journal. And then I wrote about the class outcomes on my teaching website. And subsequently, several years later, in fact, this past September, this assignment that we gave these students was published in Creative Acts for Curious People, a book by Sarah Stein Greenberg, the executive director at Stanford's D School. So you can see there were many, these are 3 different examples, and they each had various phases of dissemination depending on who the audience was. This is the book with the assignment published there. So now I wanted to hand it over to Lori, who can tell you about the innovations that we're working on at Children's and her story behind those products. So I'll keep my slides open because I've got her slides as well. So.
Thank you, Jules. I'm going to start just a little bit by sharing a part of my story and what the problem was that led me to the innovation that I created. And I think that it's quite serendipitous that I'm back at Children's, but my story that led me to Children's started as a parent at the bedside. My youngest daughter was born with hypoplastic left heart syndrome. And she's had 5 open heart surgeries and will be an eventual heart transplant. And between her 3rd and 4th open heart surgeries, we had about a 6-month stay at Children's. She had a bunch of complications. She had a lot of lines, tubes, and drains. She was 2 years old at the time, and she got bored, she got frustrated, and was very curious at that age, and just tried to disconnect all of her lines quite often. So I noticed that as a problem and just became very frustrated. And nurses did an incredible job at trying to come up with different ways to just stabilize those lines and try to keep her from disconnecting. So, it was apparent that back then that it was an issue. And then after I actually became a nurse and got myself back to Children's, I started working at the intestinal rehab unit. And we have a lot of lines, tubes, and drains on that unit as well. Most of our kids have central lines, PICC lines, Broviacs. And we, current practice to keep those lines down is just to tape them to the back of either hospital gowns or t-shirts, whatever the kids are wearing. And so we have a lot of kids that also have drains. And when they disconnect those drains, the contents spill. It can become a problem for infection, especially when you have drains and central lines on the same patient. And so it dawned on me that this is a much more common problem than we realized. And I wanted to find a better way to actually protect the lines. And so one of the shifts, I just drew out an idea on my report sheet. And that was actually it'll be one of the slides that Jules will be sharing. But I just sketched out the idea because I wanted to find a better way. And I think this is part of, thinking about disseminating knowledge. Like we, as clinicians, wherever you work, we have these common problems that we're coming across, and just whatever that might be, write it down. If there's something that's frustrating to you, write it down, because this was something that came to me as a parent 10 years ago. And now I'm experiencing those same things as a nurse. And so I really wanted to come up with a solution to protect the lines, because CLABSIs are an issue as well. And when you have again, patients with multiple lines, tubes, and drains, it's extremely important to protect their central lines. And so let me see, Jules, where we are on the, so this was the initial idea that that Jules had come up with. And we wanted to try and find a way to protect the actual connections of the IV sites and the central line. So it's really the IV hubs. And this was the first iteration that we had come up with, and you can see the triple connectors there. And then we wanted to come up with a way that was child-proofing. So nurses' dexterity and the ability to open these connector protectors is important, but the bigger concept is to prevent children from opening and having access to their lines. And we will have different sizes of these. My idea was to initially find something that one size for IVs, one size for drains, but the concept itself is really to protect the connections of all lines, tubes, and drains so that they do not become disconnected or tampered with. And so this one that you see is for the IV connections. So whether you have a PICC line, a standard peripheral IV, or a central line that has the IV hubs connected to it, these can be placed around that to prevent children from disconnecting. And I say children, but we've had older children, 18-year-olds, who just they don't feel like taking their IV poles to the bathroom with them. So they just disconnect their TPN and lipids and walk away and go to the bathroom and leave their lines running. So it's not just young pediatrics. We have teenagers that will disconnect themselves as well. And this is a feeding tube connector protector to protect the feeding tubes. And we use the G-tube connections as well as the feeding bags as drainage bags as well. We do have a lot of patients that need to empty gastric contents. And so those bags will act as a drainage device as well. And so when those become disconnected, as you can imagine, stomach and intestinal contents on the bed near or next to IV lines can be very problematic. And so this idea was also part of the connector protector family, if you will, and just trying to prevent those lines from becoming disconnected. So as you can see, the lines cannot back out and become disconnected. And then this is also a sketch that I drew up because in addition to protecting the actual IV connections as well, I wanted to have a way to stabilize it and attach it to the patient to prevent pulling on the actual Broviac or central line sites themselves. It's a problem when you have extremely active children running down the hallway with their IV poles, because they do. And I wanted to have a better way than just taping these lines to their hospital gowns to keep them connected and secure. So again, a decades-old problem of what we as nurses see and have seen for a long time, and we're just trying to come up with a better way to secure these. So those were. This is another idea to hold the connector protectors in place. And this is a sleeve. And so the idea is just to hold them together to prevent them from tugging on the actual insertion sites. And on the ends, you can see the posies that you can clip onto the patient or the bed potentially, and then you can cinch it together and tighten it up to make them closer together. You can either lay them flat or roll them in a ball and stick them on the back as well. And I just have to say, I'm very excited about the innovation program at Children's, and the umbrella of possibilities with innovation here. It's really a one-stop shop. Children's is a very well-oiled machine, and I'm still it's very surreal to have had an idea go from paper based on a problem that I had as a parent, and then I got here as a nurse, and to be able to see a product being produced that can potentially help parents, families, and nurses at the bedside. I'm very excited about the possibilities for this. And so I cannot reiterate enough how important it is to really think about your problems as possibilities, because as clinicians in the workspace, we come across problems every day, and we're just so used to fixing them quickly because we have to. But if you just take a minute, maybe after your shift or when you get home, to think about what a solution might look like to you. What is, in the grand scheme of things, what's the best possible outcome? What would be the best solution for something? And just write down your problem. And even if you don't know how to get from point A to point B, sometimes sharing that with someone is the way to collaborate and try to find a solution to these problems. So I'm incredibly excited. I'm very privileged to have the opportunity to work with Jules and Kalale and the Innovation Council, because this has been an incredible experience. I'm very proud of the work that we've done so far, and I'm very excited about the future of innovation here at Children's.
Thank you, Lori, so very much. And now Debbie Hadden. Debbie, you're still on mute.
Hi guys. I'm trying to share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so I would really like to dovetail onto what Lori just said about how awesome of a team this is here at Children's when it comes to innovations, and how it is a really fine oiled machine, and how great it is to just have an idea that comes to your mind and be able to reach out to multitudes of people here at Children's that can help you make it come to life. I am a manager of the float pool groups. I have critical and acute care. Acute care float pool, I do hire new grads into, and the new grads go to something called a nurse residency program. Through nurse residency program, they go and have to do a change project. So it's a year-long residency program where they, learn things, take it to the unit, in their orientation process, come back, talk about the things that they've learned and the things that need to be changed within their workflow. So I will say from the beginning of time, when I started hiring new grads, they've all done a change project on floating. They've created badge cards that give them all the numbers for their floating to help them know who to call, where to call when they go to different units. They've created booklets to hand out to the units to give to floats when they come to their unit. And then as time went on and technology increased and we started getting the phones that the nurses could carry, Samia Haddad in 2015 was a new grad. She came to me and said, I want to create a float app. I said, that sounds great. Let's do it. So she idealized it, brought it to paper, said that this was a project she really wanted to work on, and unfortunately life changed and she moved away after a year and the project kind of faded off. In comes Mary Grace in about 2018. Mary Grace Banks was a Conway Scholar from Catholic University and a new grad in my float pool. So she said, I want to do a float app. I said, that's great. We've had that happen before. So Mary Grace put this all together. She pulled up all the documents. Oh, kind of change. Okay, and this was what she drew up for a float app for our phone. It was originally designed for an iPhone, which is how she drew it up exactly. On the float app, she wanted the very front screen to be each unit that was in the hospital. She really focused on acute care, but we got her to push a little and put critical care on there as well. But each unit is represented on the front page of the app. And then within the unit were several different sections that you could find your resources, unit phone numbers, what kind of float assignment you would have, codes that you might need on the unit, charting tips, discharge procedures, and then just miscellaneous information. She also wanted to make sure there was an easy way to access any number in the hospital, whether it be radiology, blood bank, dietary, anything that you could possibly think of. So she created another page that had all that information in it too. And you can see as you go through here what her design looked like. So she actually single-handedly went out and gathered all this information herself from the acute care units. When she felt like she didn't have enough, she reached out to some of the educators and some of the other float pools who helped her pull in some more information. That's what you're seeing here, drawn up, typed up, ready to go. So I'm going to stop for a second there and say, we got all this information pulled together. We went to the Bioengineering and Research Department. We met up with Kevin Cleary, who said yes, he could give us a student intern from the University of Maryland to help us create this project. So the student intern came in and he mocked up an app for us, but it still needed some more work. So then we went to Dr. Hines and said, more work means more money, more time, more resources. Dr. Hines jumped right in, as she always does, and said, yes, I can help. So we were able then to gather our resources and go back to Kevin Cleary, who got us with an Indian app development company who created the app for us. And we got with informatics and the Bear Institute and anybody else you could possibly think of to get this app on the phones. Simi King, Umar Bari, Brad Sittler, Ian Crumbly all chimed in to help make this project work for us. The only problem with it was that to update it, you had to go back to that engineer to say, find the code for me in the app so that I can update it. This phone number changed. We got to find that phone number in this app somehow. It was all in code. It was me one-on-one with this engineer to try to update it. So since then, we were accepted through the Bear Institute by the Drexel University students to have this be one of their projects for graduation. So the Drexel University students, told you this was a labor of love with many, many, many people in parts, worked on this project this summer. They have updated to a point that all we have to do is simply click on an app on our computers and click on the individual buttons, and you can add pages, you can add pictures, you can add numbers real time. As soon as you do it, click, it's done. We're working on that to get it to go live probably December 1st. For those of you who haven't seen the app, I'm going to give you just a brief overview of what it looks like. If I can get the video to start. Let me know if you can see the video. Yes? So this is just showing you how it works on the actual Zebra phone. All the phone numbers are connected directly in here. So if you click on a phone number, it goes directly to your dial pad. You hit send, and it calls them right now. And you can pull up unit resources. It tells you each individual thing that you're looking for. How do they do their dressing changes? How do they do their TPN? Any of that stuff, specifically individualized for each unit. And you can just see, we'll continue to go through each unit a little bit to give you examples. This has been, and I'm going to say it again, a labor of love. We are so excited. Dr. Hines has been a key person in this. The Drexel students have done a phenomenal job. I do not have an example of the updating in my slides here. But like I said, some of the really, really big challenges and barriers were updating information and how we had to reach out to the engineer to comb through. The Drexel students fixed that. So now with COVID, we can update like where their isolation procedures are, where their PPE is located, all of that stuff. So we're really super excited to get that off the ground. More to come on that. I'm sure I missed a million things because I'm not a great public speaker, but if anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask. I will say that speaking to dissemination, which is something that Jules talked about, we created this app basically for nurses to make floating experiences better. And it sure did. In the process of that, all of this app went live on every Zebra phone. So residents have it. Units that don't get floats, PACU, ED, have it. They all use it. They have all come back to us and said, how can we get into this? What can you put in this for us? We love that we can call the charge nurse at the drop of a hat. We love that we know what the codes are to get into a room to get supplies if we need it for physicians. The ED loves it because they can reach the charge nurse and say, we have this patient that's ready to come up. Who can we call to get a report? Whatever, it's all there for them and they want it. So it's really, really, really great to see how far we can reach out with this product. We've had Lyndon Talley, our CNO, reach out to CNOs on a conference call about this project with huge interest. We presented to PTAP, which is our certification for nurse residencies. We had over 500 people on that call, and I'm telling you, the board lit up. They were so excited. How do we get this? How do we do this? We want this, we want this, we want this. So we're still in the process of reaching out to those people to see what we can do to help them. And we're still working with Brad and his team to see if we can market this product because we think it's really, really great. I think we can go really far with this. The ideas are endless. Let me just say that. Any questions?
This would be great for travel nurses as well.
Yes. Anybody can use it. It's on every single phone. So it's not limited. We just have to be able to reach these new people when they come in to say, this app is on this phone. I will say most recently, one thing that was really, really great is, as you all may have experienced here at Children's, sometimes we have IT downtime, and sometimes it affects our Care Connect Zebra phones. When it does, they can't claim roles. They can't see who they can call, who they want to. Sometimes the phone book disappears. The Float app is still there. So you can easily click on the Float app, go to the unit, say you're looking for the cards resident, you can go to that HKU, go to cards, go to phone numbers, cards residents right there, click it, you can call them. You don't have to know their name, they don't have to claim the role, it will still go to their phone. that has worked for us in 2 major downtimes. So they've still been able to reach the people that they needed to reach, even though the phone book from the Beaver phone has disappeared. It has been a great success, I would say.
It actually seems like something that graduate medical education might be interested in too for residents.
Yes, for sure. We have heard that. We have heard from them.
Debbie, thank you so much for that. And I hope you will look in the chat because there's several messages for you. I want to thank all 3 conversationalists. And before we open it up for everyone to add their thoughts and their questions, I just want to ask Jules, Lori, and Debbie if they would like to comment to each other or ask each other anything before we open it up to all of our participants.
I had just mentioned to Debbie before we got started, I use this on a daily basis on my own unit. So I love the Float Me app. It's fabulous. I love it. If you don't use it, take advantage. And
Thank you, Lori.
yeah.
Very nice. All right. Let's
Dr.
open-
Hines,
Yes,
if I could just make a quick comment, I often get asked when we're on the recruitment trail about, do nurses have to float at Children's? And now I could talk about the Float Me app as a resource that they'll get to use so they don't have to be as scared of floating.
I so appreciate your comment, Jill. Isn't it something about an innovation that it becomes so useful, so fitting for a number of different circumstances than maybe the original intent? Thank you, Jill. Others, please. Your comments, your thoughts. And while these are, Dr. Cleary, please go right ahead.
So yes, I think I would just like to add, I think that Debbie shows the value of persistence. It's one thing to have an idea. I think all you guys who have been through the process know that the successful ideas are the ones that you're persistent about. And if you don't have a champion to keep moving it along, because Debbie knows it was many years till it came to fruition. So I'm very happy to see that. And definitely the value of persistence is key. That's all I wanted to add.
Thank you, Kevin.
If I could just add to that quickly, Kevin, I went to Kevin with the original idea. He really, really helped with that. I know I said that already, but I just wanted to add, when we came back again a few years later, he said, listen, lots of people come to me with these ideas. I want someone that's going to finish it. Challenge on, game on. Thank you, Kevin. Everything.
Thank you both. All right, to all of our participants.
I would just like to mention one of our national innovative leaders, Dr. Patty Brennan, I was talking with her recently, and she said we often ask, well, how? And what we really should be asking is, what if?
Oh, nice.
And I think your examples today are classic of that. And she will be presenting that at the Academy meeting this weekend. But that is her challenge. We should be asking, what if?
Oh, it's exciting. Thank you, Dr. Feedham. So to all of our participants, I'm going to repeat some exciting phrasing that was used today. Problems as possibilities. What if? Connector, protector. Dissemination. People asking, may I have access to that too? Your thoughts and questions for our 3 conversationalists. And while you're pondering those, I do want to welcome our participants from Trinity University, from GW, and from the University of Maryland. It's wonderful to have you with us. Let's see, in the chat. Oh yeah, Ann Posner, welcome. Would you like to speak to your comment in the chat? It's a very important comment. Please, Ann, go right ahead.
Hi, my name's Ann. I'm one of the Conway Scholars, and I'm in my senior year of nursing at Catholic University. And the Float Me app has been so helpful as I've transitioned from a nurse trainee to a PCT this past September. So I just so appreciate the effort that was put forth into that, because it has really helped me my first time floating. And I know it will help me too future as I continue to float and hopefully become a nurse soon.
Well, we're awfully glad to have you with us, Anne. Congratulations on being a Conway Scholar. I want to add to Anne's important comments. When we complain to each other, fantastic. It's a great chance to listen to each other and to begin designing the solution. Often on rounds, you'll see me carrying a piece of paper or a napkin, and I'm drawing out a complaint because I believe I now have study variables that could make all the difference in a situation by improving it. I believe in complaining. Jules is nodding.
Yeah, I wanted to just add that in terms of the Biodesign Program, we're really trying to encourage clinicians to just share the problems, and you don't need to have a solution for that problem. And that's really what we're after for the program, is to open up that conversation and to not be afraid to share issues with us, and in a safe space. You know, we honor your complaints.
Mm-hmm. And what's really neat, Jules, is that Debbie's innovation shows how a person reporting to her trusted her enough to complain. Whereas you've been working with individuals who may not have known you clinically, but also trusted you enough to complain that you might be able to make a situation better. So two very neat contrasting situations. And then of course, Lori seeing it firsthand herself as a parent and then as a nurse. Yeah. Let's see, Eileen Eng has an important comment. Eileen, would you like to speak to that?
Thank you, Pam. Well, I see potential nursing research studies with both of these projects as interventions. I think Lori stumbled onto something that we've known existed in nursing for a long time, having to do with inadvertent or accidental disconnections that were just things that occurred in the course of a day. And I think that you could document how frequently that occurs, and then the intervention that has the intervention as a solution with your device. And I think that really lends itself to a dissemination strategy that will kind of facilitate the adoption of this. Is like, it reminds me of when Pixis was introduced. I'm old enough to say that. And then I think Debbie Hadden, you know, floating has always been a nursing dissatisfaction. And it's one of the things, I mean, as Jill says, you know, do we have to float? And I think that we could look at this Float Me app as a way that increases capacity and skill within an institution and increases satisfaction as well. Because as a workforce issue, we need to be able to have some flexibility, but at the same time, how do you balance dissatisfaction with the nurses who feel like largely the reason they don't like to float is not because they don't want to float, they just feel like they're put in a position of not knowing as much. And I think that this, again, is an intervention that's a problem that's been studied for a long time without a true intervention.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Eileen. And in a gross manner, we do an every 2-year what we call pulse check on RN satisfaction. And sure enough, for several of those every other year, the major dissatisfier was floating. And then Debbie helped to create the float pool. And oh gosh, our complaints about floating diminished greatly. And then we implemented the trial run of the Float Me app. And once again, the complaints about floating diminished again. So it's a gross indicator. It's not a for sure refined measurement, but it is a nice thumbs up about the immediate impact and the later consequence of this app and innovation. Thank you, Debbie.
I will say that the Resource and Innovation Council is doing a ton of work on this and collecting data on, and have been for a very long time, on the satisfaction or dissatisfaction of floating and the effects that the app has had on that. So a lot of the data that we're collecting to see if the app is as successful as we think it is comes from their really hard work and efforts. And and we have partnered with them as well.
Which is another nice point to be made about how all of you have reached out across the network to interact with other individuals, taking full advantage of resources here. It's a real credit to all of you. I was just looking to see if Laura Nicholson from Resource Council might still be on the line, because she might have some information to share with us. There she is. Laura, would you like to speak to the Resource Council and the work that you've been doing with innovation?
You know, we have been fortunate because every month Jules comes and does a design process workshop with us. So we have been perfecting our skills on our collecting problems from our staff and the biodesign process. So we really have been fortunate to be educated by Jules. And then to increase, as Lori was saying earlier, just to go out and collect, and even saying, what is the problem? Like, not coming up with the solution, but what are your problems? So, you know, we go out on rounds during Nurses Week, we take out a cart and we go to talk to different people in different units. So going to our staff and collecting, and I still want to say idea, because that's kind of what I have in my mind. But as Jules reminds me regularly, we want to collect the problems. So that's exciting. We're also, I think we're going to make it a goal for 2022 to increase, kind of just increase our communication and work with Debbie even further on spreading the word. And kind of like, even we talked about it at our last meeting with the Float Me app. It's not just a Float Me app. It's a resource for every nurse every day to find information to help them care for their patients. So even trying to kind of change that language and spread the word, and just knowing that, yes, it's out there, but there are nurses that still could be educated and know exactly what the app offers. So just kind of, I think, and everybody on this meeting right now or at this Conway conversation, it takes a long time to change culture in our hospital. Like, it takes revisiting these things over and over and over until it becomes our everyday language. So I think that that's kind of what resource and innovation can help do, is take that and spread like the information out there and help educate staff. Because these are wonderful. The fact that we have the ability to help with that solution is phenomenal. I've loved when we actually get together and look at Lori's connector protector and look at what we're developing, and the line organizer, and even the IV pole connector, so that you can move everything as one unit. And the fact that we can say that nursing came up with these ideas, and we saw it from the problem all the way to the solution and everything in between. And my plug for simulation is that we can also use simulation to actually kind of work with these devices before they ever go out into trial on our patients. So that's my simulation plug.
That's a good plug. And I like your plug for the carefulness of the use of words. Words matter. I'd like to go to Andrea Ewing for just a moment. She's got an important question that I think will go right back to our panelists, Dr. Cleary and Dr. Escondanyan. So Andrea, are you still on?
Still on.
Yay.
Can you hear me?
I can. Please go right ahead.
Well, a person like me, I would like to know, I have an idea right now that, or let's just say it's a problem. And where do I go? What's my first step that I take to find out how we can get help to help resolve it?
The perfect question, Andrea. I'm going to float that right to our panelists.
Andrea, you're more than welcome to reach out to me with your problem. And we regularly, look at various problems that people bring to us and try to understand them further. Sometimes we create meetings, we set up meetings with the clinician to learn more and see if we think that we can move forward with solutions. So please reach out to me with your concern and we'll take a look at it.
Andrea, Jules is listed in our email, sherman.jules, I think, at Children's National. This is great.
JP Sherman at childrensnational.org.
Excellent. Thank you, Jules. And thank you, Andrea. And I
Thank
want to
you.
thank you all. What an amazing Conway conversation. Thank you all for being participants. Special thanks to our conversationalists. I look forward to each of you getting credit for this through the link that is in the chat. Please, if you would, remember to put your name there so Eileen can use that for her important attestation purposes. And please know that in November, we're going to be talking about making more out of the very same. So we'll see you in November 1st, Tuesday, 12:30 to 1:30. Please take the best care of each of you. All my best now. Bye.